Hello, everybody. Let's take a little bit of time to look at what Varahamihira has to say in Brihat Samhita about Jupiter. Now, the interesting thing about Jupiter is that its movement has a fairly obvious synchronization with the movement of the sun and the moon. So the movements of the sun and the moon are the basis by which we have 12 divisions of the sky. Those 12 zodiac divisions, Aries, Taurus, and so on. Each one of those divisions is measured by the amount of distance that the sun moves while the moon goes all the way around the complete sky once. So, and then it's slightly idealized to make it clean. The synchronicity thing about Jupiter is that it covers one of those spaces in 1 year. So what the sun covers in 1 month, Jupiter covers in almost exactly 1 year. So there's an interesting thing about Jupiter is that it's got something about its tempo of its movement makes it very important calendrically. It's a very simple calendric tool because it's very synchronized with the months. So you'll find that in ancient India and Vedic culture, Jupiter was used for timing things longer than a year. And those things were called yugas. And they were of different sizes stuff. So we'll hear a little bit about that today. But they are not the gigantic Puranic yugas that you're used to. Gigantic hundreds of thousands of years. They're like 5 years. Okay, here we go. Let's see what he says. He says the years of Jupiter. So Jupiter spends 1 year in each Rashi. So each year of Jupiter is treated a little bit differently. But it's not that simple like, oh, this is the Aries year, this is the Capricorn year, for example. It's not that simple. The years of Jupiter take their names from the Nakshatras, in which he reappears after conjoining the sun. So you see how important sun conjunctions are? And these names are identical with the names of the lunar months. Okay, so Jupiter, when it gets, according to the comment of this author, Jupiter will combust or disappear within 11 degrees of the sun. And then will reappear then when it's 12 degrees away from the sun. So if you're just looking at your astrology software, you want to see the moment where Jupiter gets 11 degree in 1 minute away from the sun, moving away from it. Whether it's retrograding or directing, you have to take that into account. When that moment happens, you look at the nakshatra that Jupiter is in, and that is the beginning of that year for Jupiter. Why? Because Jupiter will combust once a year. Second statement, these years beginning from Kritika follow each 2 stars beginning from Kritika, but the 5th, the 11th, and 12th years follow each 3 nakshatras. So I think he's saying here is they're going to skip. So you would get Kritika and then Mrigashirsha, right? And then after you get to the 5th, 11th, and 12th, they skip 2 nakshatras. Let me see. There's actually a footnote on this, so let's see what he's saying. Oh, what he's saying is it works like this. If Jupiter reappears in Kritika, since he said that it follows the name of the moon, the lunar month. In Kritika, if Jupiter reappears from combustion in Kritika or Rohini, then it's called the Kritika year. If it's in Mrigashirsha or Ardra, it's called the Mrigashirsha year, etc. If it's in Purva Palguni or but once you go to the fifth one, Purva Palguni, then it will be called Palguna for Palguni, Uttar Palguni, or Hasta. Okay, so basically we've found out that Jupiter will be identified as having a unique year based on the nakshatra in which it reappears from its conjunction with the sun. And then he says there's a basic quality to each one of these years. Let me see if I can give you a summary. So Kritika years for Jupiter are not supposed to be good. Let's see what. Let me instead of reading all these things, let me kind of give you an overview first. Mrigashirsha year is also not good. Pushya year Jupiter is good. Magha year is very good. Palguni year is mixed. Chitra year is mixed. Vishaka year is good. Jeshta year is mixed. Ardra, so you could just look for you won't remember what I'm saying anyway, so get your copy of Brihat Samhita somewhere. You can Google Brihat Samhita PDF, and you can have this for the more details. So basically some of the years are good, some are bad, some are mixed, and then you just tailor the interpretation of how it's good or bad or mixed to go along with the symbolism of that nakshatra. Ayush says in some years we have an extra lunar month. Would that make Jupiter's years different every third year? It's not named by the month. It just follows the same naming system as the lunar month. So for example, you have Kartik, Magha, Chaitra, right? Magh. You're familiar with those month names. You never have heard of a Rohini month, right? Although sometimes the moon is full in Rohini, but it's because it's just considered to be a Kartik. So he's just following the same convention to name Jupiter, just same naming convention. It's not actually based on the moon's months. All right. Then so he talks about those years. Then he says, got a new one. When Jupiter passes through the northern path, there will be health and happiness in the land. When he passes through the southern path, the reverse of these will be the case. And when he passes through the middle path, there will be neither much of the former nor later. So 2 things. You got to, like we talked about with Mercury yesterday, you have to take both of these things together. Both the concept that Jupiter has a particular year, which has a particular quality, and then you want to see when Jupiter is north of the sun's plane or south of the sun's plane. And if you watch the video that I put out yesterday about the coronavirus 2019 eclipse, you see that one of the very dramatic things about this eclipse was how the sun and moon were at the southernmost point, with Jupiter also at exactly the same southernmost point with the southern node, and in Mula, the southernmost nakshatra. And so here he's kind of confirming the concept that south is not great for Jupiter. He says it's better for Jupiter to be above the sun's plane than it is to be below. Somebody's asking if Bhumandala is flat. Bhumandala is not flat. You want to know? You want to know how we know that Bhumandala is not flat? Because we read the Surya Siddhanta, even if we don't give a damn about modern science, which we should. You just read the Surya Siddhanta, and you'll hear that it is round. And the Surya Siddhanta is what? A book of stories, a book of philosophy, a book of meditation? No, it's a book of astronomy. So if you want to know about the astronomy of the Earth, your best source for it is Surya Siddhanta. Surya Siddhanta says there's two pole stars. How does a flat Earth have a pole star? There's two pole stars, and the tilt of the Earth is 24 degrees. And further, it has perihelion and aphelion. Is that the right word in English? It orbits the sun, and its closest and furthest points are exactly aligned with the exact middle of the sixth season summer and sixth season winter. So in other words, it has exactly the same astronomical model as modern science. And, by the way, these statements which I just mentioned to you prove that, these statements which I just mentioned to you were only true and were exactly true on the same date, on the same year, with a 50-year plus or minus, in 12,000 BC. So the Vedic culture was making these measurements 14,000 years ago. Making these observations and measurements 14,000 years ago. And the flat Earth thing is a little bit more modern than that. All right. So let's go back to Jupiter. If in 1 year Jupiter passes through two nakshatras, so you get a similar consideration as you do with days. Like sometimes the moon is generally only supposed to pass one phase and one nakshatra per day, but sometimes it will pass two, and sometimes it will get stuck in one because of the difference between the idealized measurement and the actual movement. And so you get different interpretations of that day based on if the moon is in one of these oddball situations. Same thing with Jupiter's years. If Jupiter has to pass through 2, then it's good. If he passes through 2.5, it's not so good, etc. Now, he talks about something different. He goes to his other thing, which he often does, which is talk about the appearance of the planet in the sky. He says, the disk of Jupiter, if the disk of Jupiter should appear the color of fire, then there's fear from fire. So it shouldn't be reddish. We don't really want to see Jupiter reddish. If it's yellow, then you get disease, like jaundice. If it's dark blue, so it shouldn't look like Mercury either. It shouldn't look like Saturn. If it looks dark blue, then you get war. If it shouldn't look like Mercury. If it's green, then you get suffering from thieves. And if it's dark red, then you get war again. So if it's any kind of... war. Yeah, if it's bright red, then it's fire. So we don't want Jupiter to have these particular colors. We want Jupiter to be clean and white. If the disk of Jupiter should appear the color of smoke, then there's a drought. If it should be visible during the day, so this is not good. According to Varahamihira, you don't want to see Jupiter during the day, especially because it's bad for the government for Jupiter to appear during the day. And if Jupiter looks big and clear, like white and big and bright, then everything is good. So you might think, why did he mention all these things? When you read this book in general, you're going to be thinking, why is he constantly talking about things that cause destruction? Because he's talking about abnormalities and they seldom happen. And then he says what it normally happens is really good. So the normal condition for Jupiter is that it's big and bright. And when that's normal, then everything is good. In some odd cases, it has these weird colors, and then that's not a good sign. Now he's going to go back to talking about Nakshatras. He says, Rohini Kritika. He's going to talk about how the Nakshatras relate to a personified year. Personification of those years that we talked about. The 13 different types of Jupiter's years. So the Nakshatras Rohini and Kritika form the body of the Vatsara Purusha, Jupiter's personified 13 year. The two Ashadas form his navel. Ayalya, what's Ayalya? Forms the heart, and Magha the heart bladder. Okay, when benefics pass through these, there will be happiness in the land. If benefics pass through the middle of the Jupiter's body, then it's bad. Okay, that's a little thing that he says. Then he says, now he's going to start to talk about the years, and I think I'll just introduce this briefly. Do I think Soma played a role in Jyotish? No. Jyotish. Soma played a role in Vedic culture. Jyotish was a part of Vedic culture, so they're not like from different worlds, but no, Jyotish has nothing to do with Soma. Soma has to do with the ceremonies. 20. Multiply 11 by the number of past solar years from the time of the Shaka prince, and take 4 times the product. To it, add 8,589 and divide the sum by 3,750. Add the quotient to the said number of solar years from the time of the Shaka prince and divide the sum by 60. The remainder represents the number of years by which Jupiter has advanced in a cycle of 60 years. So, divide this remainder by 5. The quotient will give the number of yugas preceding the current yuga of Jupiter, calculated from Vishnu, the name of the first of Jupiter's 12 yugas, each consisting of 5 years. So now he's talking about a 5-year period of Jupiter. And that is the Rig Vedic yuga concept, is a 5-year unit. There's a 5-year period which is called a yuga. And the reason why I called it a yuga is because Jupiter would have some kind of a conjunction. Yuga means conjunction. Jupiter would have some sort of conjunction that would recur every 5 years. Maybe we'll hear exactly about it now. Don't worry about the calculation because I'm not going to do it. If you're the type of person that wants to do the calculation, get the book and practice it. We just want to survey this book. So when you get your quotient from all this math, you're going to find out which of the 12 yugas Jupiter is in, and then the remainder is how many years have already elapsed in that. And also there's a formula: if you divide Jupiter's years by 12 and multiply the remainder by 9 and divide the product by 4, the quotient will represent the number of nakshatras calculated from Dhanishta passed over by Jupiter, average Jupiter, and the remainder, the number of Navamshas passed over by him into the next. Now we will explain the principle involved in the calculation. Okay, so actually this particular translation, which is available on the internet, has a long, the translator gave a long comment to show you how the math works. So each yuga has 5 years, and then each year within the yuga has a different name. Samvatsara, Parivatsara, Idavatsara, Anuvatsara, and Idvatsara. And each one of those 5 has a deity. Agni, Sun, Moon, Brahma, and Shiva, Rudra. in order. So Agni is the first year of Jupiter, Surya is the second, Chandra is the third, Brahma is the fourth, and Rudra is the fifth. Generally, in every yuga, there will be good rain in the first year and at the beginning of the second year. Excessive rain in the third year, moderate rain at the end of the fourth year, and slight rain in the fifth year. In the first 4 yugas, there will be prosperity in the land. Next or middle 4, there will not be much of it, and then the last 4, mankind suffers misery. So you get this little thing where Jupiter has a 12-year cycle. No, Jupiter has a 12 times 5, so it's a 60-year cycle. Right, a 60-year cycle of 12 units of 5. And the first 20 years of that cycle are good. So we should see a 60-year. So this would be interesting. Look in history and see if you see this, if you guys want to do some homework. See if you can see a kind of sine wave on a 60-year basis where you get prosperity 20 years, mediocrity 20 years, and then decline or depression 20 years. And then rise back up to prosperity, medium, depression, prosperity, medium, depression on a 20-year sine wave. See if that, and if you get that, send me an email with your findings. Or let me know somehow or another. Because that's what he's saying should happen. Then he says, when Jupiter reappears at the beginning of the constellation of Dhanishta in the month of Magha, the first year of the cycle of 60 years of Jupiter is known as Prabhav. In it, everybody will be happy. So this is interesting how they used Jupiter. And then he's saying, if you're in the first of the 12 yugas, it also makes a difference what the things that he talked about before, where Jupiter reappears from conjunction with the sun, the nakshatra from which Jupiter appears from the sun. Let's see. Then they not every yuga is named the same. Not every yuga has the same sequence of 5 years. The second yuga is Angira, Shrimukh, Bhav, Yuv, and Dhatri. So it's an elaborate thing. The third yuga is particularly good to Indra. It has different sequence of 5 years. So you can look this up. So that's the remainder of the chapter. He talks about the years of the yuga. Next time we study this, or I study this, we'll go into more details and try to map all these things out. But for now, I just want to get an overview of what Varahamihira is presenting. In his Brihat Samhita. So he just goes through for the remainder of the chapter, identifying the 5 years for each of the 12 yugas, and then telling you the basic nature of each one. Then finally at the end he concludes the way he concludes all of his chapters. He's saying if Jupiter is really big and very white and shiny, and if he doesn't get hidden by anything, like hidden by another planet or hidden by the moon or something, then everybody's happy. It's very prosperous. Okay, enough of Varahamihira's obscure but interesting astrology of Jupiter. Tomorrow, we will look at what he has to say about Venus. And now I'm just going to switch the stream over and do Bhagavatam. Thanks for joining me. Yeah, this was chapter 7, Bardo, so tomorrow we'll do chapter 8.